everybody, it's me, Laura, and today we're going to go ahead and create my Natasha flowers in blue in polymer clay as a picture. So this has been something I've been wanting to do for a while, but I wanted to go ahead and lay out pretty much the foundation before I started doing some of these. Anyways, right here I have white, I have like a dark silver, a light blue, kind of a medium blue, and a dark blue clay. And we're going to create kind of a Skinner blend between all of these colors. This is going to be the foundation and our background for our picture. Okay, so right here we have a prepped board that I've already taken and dismantled. I took the glass out and I put it all back together with my board in place. And if you're wondering as to what the size of this thing is, it wound up being like, what, 10.5 by, I want to say, yeah, by 9. So it was an odd size, but I thought, let's go ahead and just try this out. And right here, this is what I usually do. I take it in about 1.5 inches on the white surface of my board. So this way then I have a little bit of play. The white acts as kind of a natural frame in the metal frame itself. And then right here I have some scrap clay. Now, I started doing this a little while back. It's just, I put a little bit of a foundation of scrap clay down, and then we're going to go ahead and we'll cover this with our overall background. I went ahead and took some of this scrap clay and I thinned it out on my Atlas pasta machine at around a 3 or a 4. Now right here I'm trying to get it so it's laying pretty flat, trying to get some of the bubbles out. Once I do that, now it's really hard to see a little bit here, but you kind of see the pencil marks on the board. I overlap just a little bit and then I'm taking the metal side of my ruler here, and at first it stuck, but then I took a little bit of my baby powder, or you can go ahead and, spray a little bit of water on the front part of your ruler there and use it as a release agent. But right here, I'm just kind of using that blade and I'm just cutting right down so I get a nice line. So you could kind of tell right there, the ruler, I had not put any baby powder on it, and you could kind of tell it came right up, and that was what I wanted to show you right there. Here, of course, I'm using my baby powder, but like I said, you can use water too. Okay, now that we've got that scrap clay all kind of formed up to my lines that I did in pencil, we're going to go ahead and bring in our Skinner blend that we had made of my blue to my white. And it's a pretty large piece. I did this on an Atlas 180 machine, so it's a little bit wider, and that helps some. But now we're going to go ahead, and you can tell I'm placing this down on that scrap clay. Now I do have a few air bubbles in here that kind of, sometimes I just get that. I get the air bubbles, and part of that I don't think is necessarily bad. Now everybody says, well, you don't want to have air bubbles, but to me I keep thinking, well, yeah, but I also kind of look at it like if you push down too far on this clay, the clay can crack. There's always that problem, or I should say that issue of where the clay can crack because this is such a large piece. But I have found when I make these pictures, especially if I put down that scrap clay ahead of time and I don't push so much, it's very important that you don't just push into the clay. It almost acts like where you adhere it so much that when you do go down and you're going to have to glue this thing, you're going to have to glue it to your board. If you push down too much and put too much pressure on it, there is more of a chance the clay, over time, you'll find cracks in the picture piece. But I have found, and I did this to a wood piece, that if you don't push into it quite so much, it can be, it will survive and it won't have the cracks in it. So I think it's just all in how you treat the clay. But as you can tell here, I'm going in and I'm trying to smooth out as much of the bubbles as possible, but I'm trying to do it very gently. So when I get that done, you could kind of see the edges there where it's going over that scrap clay. Right here, I'm just going to go ahead and take my blade and I'm going to cut into where that edge is, where you could kind of see that little edge. And I would say this is where, I take it apart a little piece at a time. And then eventually I try to, how do I say it, like mold it over that edge on the scrap clay. Okay, so right here, I'm going to cut down this edge and we'll have our finished up background piece and we'll move on to the next segment. Okay, so now that we have our background done, let's go ahead and bring in our green. We need to create our stems for our flowers. So right here, I've cut this like, I want to say another 3 or 4 on my Atlas pasta machine. And you can kind of see I just cut off of that flat sheet just a squiggly like little line, and it gets a little thicker at the very bottom. And then I'm just lifting these out, and these are going to be our stems that we go ahead and place onto our board. Okay, now that I've got that all done, we're going to bring our Natashas in that we had made from last time. And I had a couple extra little pieces there. I thought, let's go ahead and use those as well. And I got my board, and we're just going to move those out of the way. And then I'm going to start placing my stems down here eventually onto my board. Okay, so let's go ahead and take our first stem, and we're just laying this down kind of randomly. I'm starting, of course, left to right. And I'm just figuring out, okay, where do I want to place this particular flower? If you need to, and I kind of did this a little bit ahead of time before I did this video part, I kind of placed my flowers down first to get a better idea as to where I wanted that placement. And I kind of took a photo of that so I could remember what I used, where I used it. I want to make sure that I like the arrangement. If you need to do that, you know, and then come back in with your stems. Okay, so even from my photograph, as you can tell here, I'm messing around with this a little bit. I even cut a little bit of my stem off, but I did figure out, even from the photo I took of how I was going to kind of have my placement, when I came back in and I started adding in the smaller pieces, I was like, well, I need a little bit of room here. I need a little bit of room there. So you can get a general idea, but when you come in and like I'm doing it here, everything kind of changes. You know, you could start with one particular idea of how you want this thing to look, and then you'd be like, no, I don't like that. Let's move it around. So that's why, you know, the nice thing about these green stems, when I'm placing them down, it gives me, okay, this is a general place, but you can always lift them back up if you want to and place them somewhere else. Okay, so this is something I want to mention. I generally have right here where you can see my flower going off the side here. It's not completely on the clay background. I really believe in the idea of going off your board. In other words, not, how do I say this? Not staying in the lines. You might say it's my way of rebelling against society in general. But I really do like playing with my borders and not necessarily staying always within them. This is where I really like the idea, and to me it gives a really fun effect when I do this in creating these pictures. This is not the first time I've done that sort of thing, and I really like it. You know, a lot of people see that within my work. I have this idea of like, you know what, let's make this go just outside onto the white framed, you know, uncovered clay area. It really gives a neat effect. It gives a three-dimensional piece that is not necessarily always brought about, and it really emphasizes that. So if you like to do that sort of thing, play with your borders a little bit, you know, have the clay maybe go off of where you might have your background so that you can mess with it, and really to me it's a delight. Okay, so you can see here, I've got some of these tinier little dots, they're just a petal piece, but they represent kind of the idea of a smaller flower that's starting to form. So placing these in here, I had to take those big flowers out so I could figure out where that stem is going to come down for the smaller ones. And you might have to lift these on and off at times just to get this, to the right placement of what you really like. I also because this was a smaller frame for all of these big flowers, I had to go ahead and overlap of some of those flowers so that it would fit, which is something I don't always necessarily do. But in doing so, it brought about a really nice, again, another nice 3D effect that I really loved. So go ahead and play with it. When you're putting these flowers down, put them in different places, try it out, because you might be surprised as to what you end up with. All right, now that we have our stems and our flowers down, let's go ahead, and I'm taking some blue clay. I want to say it's like a medium blue, and we're going to create little tiny details in the center of our very singular type petal flowers. And right here I've used my burnisher to just kind of make a little teardrop and just kind of almost like my finger smear where I smear it down a little bit. And I'm going to do that in each one. Now this at this point, those pieces have been baked, so the clay might not stick real good. If you have to use some kind of epoxy to put it down, I use my super glue, of course, and a lot of it is just because it's liquid. It just fits right in with everything. But a smidgen, very, very small amount, and put that onto each of those little singular flowers. Once you have that done, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add in just a little bit of green. Okay, so now right now we're going to bring in our green clay and we're going to add in just these little tiny teardrops yet again, but they're going to be flattened. And they're going to roll right over where that middle part of those singular flowers are. So it'll look like it, it goes right into the stem like it was supposed to be, like it was that connection piece. And I'm just using my burnisher here. You can use your knitting needle yet again, and it works wonderful. Okay, from here we're going to go ahead and start making some clay leaves for our picture. So I'm going to take and make a ball, flatten it down, create a pointed end, and then I'm going to drag my needle right up the center, and that's going to give me my leaves. So I'm going to do this throughout the picture. What you really need to know here is that this picture serves more of an example more than anything else. So when I put these down wherever I have them, please remember that in your picture it may be a different look and you might want to change those locations. Now you're going to also notice here too that I've got these leaves, and when I put them down I use my needle tool to kind of indent it into the stem. And I do that because when I put these into the stem, I want them to kind of stay. I don't want to have to like glue every single piece down. So in a single swipe from my needle tool, I can kind of connect it into the picture, and I'm not just flattening it down. So it keeps that three-dimensional look. Okay, so we've got one last little clay feature that I want to put into this picture, and it's right on those singular kind of flowers. And it's just a simple white ball. Very tiny, but a simple white ball. And look at how dramatic that is. You've got it dark there. It'd be really nice to kind of add a little bit to it. And then I'm using my needle tool to make a little tiny hole in each one. Once I have that tiny little hole, I'm going to go ahead and create a few more of my little white balls, and I'm going to place them more in the sky area and also indent them with my knitting needle. Okay, so at this point I have baked the entire piece, and I'm going to go ahead now, and as you can tell, I used my blade there to kind of fissure off the picture, and I'm putting down a little bit of my epoxy glue, and not a ton. Don't cover the entire thing, because I think as I put it, when it comes to putting these pictures back on the board, I like to let them breathe a little bit. So you want to have a little bit of epoxy glue, that's fine, and try to get it as much in place as possible. That's why I leave my pencil lines right on the board too, because I need to know, okay, where's my corners? There it is. So that I'm more square on when I place this down. Because of course, super glue does dry really fast, and you have a little bit of time to get it down, but you know, try to get it in place as soon as possible. The other part, again, is I just feel that if you put too much super glue on the back when you adhere it onto the board, eventually I think it will start to crack. And I think it's because you need to give that clay a little bit of space, a little bit of air in there for it to kind of flow so that it won't crack. Now, when I say this, it's mainly due to the fact that, you know, this is a little bit of my own opinion. The other part too is that that background was really well conditioned. So my clay was really nice and soft. It was very flexible. So I think between the conditioning of the clay and also just some epoxy a little bit to adhere it and not tons and tons makes the conditions possible that you will not be getting cracking in your piece later on after you bake this and the clay becomes inert. Okay, so now I've started bringing in some of my rhinestones, and I have some colored kind of light blue type rhinestones. I thought instead of using clear, I'd use the blue because I've got white centers in a couple of those. Plus I've got the white pearls, so I thought, okay, we're gonna offset it with a little bit of dark. And this just goes to that whole fact of the polymer clay, it loves its contrasts. All right, now that you have your picture glued down and everything is placed, go ahead and right here, this is a little bit of Comet in a dish. And I took my baby wipe and I thought, let's just go ahead and it's really simple. I love this. You just take a little bit of that and it will take off your little pencil marks. Now, I've used an eraser before, it works, but it's not as, sometimes you get smudge marks, sometimes, sometimes an eraser doesn't work. So I suggest a little bit of Comet and a little bit of baby wipe, and you take those marks off, no problem. Now right here is the back of the picture, and I'm just kind of showing you that just to kind of give you an idea. From here, I'm going to go ahead and title it My Natasha Flowers in Blue, and I'll sign it. Okay, so this is the result from my picture that I created today. I hope you will use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I'm sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.